All right. Growing up as a kid, in Age local government area of Niger State, there's this popular song we normally sing whenever it rains. It goes like this: Eledu Babanchikwe Dalati, Eledu Babanchikwe Dalati. It simply means it is raining. Babanchiko is on his way to the farm, and of course, farming is one major activity that comes with the rainy season. But with time, began to witness some destruction of farmlands, houses, lives lost due to flooding, and I began to hate nature. But with time and of course education, I realized that we all, as individuals, we take some unguided actions that lead to the impact, the negative impact of flood we often experience in Nigeria. And of course, flooding is considered one of the most devastating, natural disaster worldwide. And of course, it's certainly not a Nigerian problem alone. But for us, we are going to focus on flooding and the challenge of flood in Nigeria, and of course, probable solutions. Thank you for staying with us, and of course, if you just join us, this is Weekend Edition on the largest TV network in Africa. Now, today, when you talk about flood in Nigeria, you can, hardly escape making reference to the 2012 experience, which was not a good experience for the country, and it's only natural that one would say that we must have learned a lot from that experience. But how far have we gone in terms of, mitigating the impact of flood in the country? Let's take this background report put together by Francis, and after that we talk more about the challenge of flood in Nigeria and probable solutions.
From China to Germany and parts of the United States, countries across the world have been ravaged by deadly flood, bringing widespread destruction in some cases to entire communities, some of which have never witnessed extreme weather like this.
Climate change phenomenon, that's what is ravaging, the whole continents, due to our negligence of the past, especially the industrialized nations. But the difference is, for the advanced countries, they have been able to develop some measure of adaptation measures, resilience, ability to cope the after effect of the flooding.
Nigeria, with over 200 million people, is the third fastest growing population in the world. The interactions of this build-up has left an indelible mark on the landscape and environment. In mid-July 2021, for instance, the major business district of Lagos Island experienced one of its worst floods in recent years. Consequently, scientific projections predict that Lagos may become uninhabitable by the end of this century as sea levels rise due to climate change.
What has been causing the flooding we are having in Nigeria is anthropogenic activities. It is human-induced. It is due to neglect of things that ought to have been done. They were not done. Take, for instance, human interference in Lagos. Maybe specifically, let me talk about Lagos Island. It's people using canoes to go into their homes. You can't even enter your home anyway. You can't. In some places, the flood took over even the SUV, the roof. So we neglect what we need to do. Now, if you look at all those places, can you show me where there are drainages? I couldn't see anyone anywhere. And within Lagos, that season, about 3 weeks ago or so, we had rainfall for almost more than 7 days. High rainfall intensity and very long duration. Where will it pass through before getting to the Atlantic? Nowhere. The Atlantic has been compromised. You have a Atlantic about 8-kilometer concrete wall. After reclaiming part of the Atlantic, and then you call it one beautiful name, Banana Island, Atlantic, and so on and so forth.
Flooding has become an annual event for Nigerian cities, where it consistently causes economic problems in the rainy season. In the last few years, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced and scores have died in the flood. But the question remains, why are we not prepared for flooding despite predictions?
Our prediction this year for 2022, we said no less than 233 local government areas in Nigeria will be heavily impacted negatively by flood. And another one, it will cut across the whole country and the FCT. We have the breakdown per state. And also 121 local government areas in Nigeria, another 121, apart from the 233, will also suffer a certain degree of flooding. But majority of the states in Nigeria take the predictions for granted. I don't know, is that they just count their citizens as a number. They don't regard them as human beings.
Nigeria has several dams along its rivers ranging from huge hydroelectric stations to smaller constructions for irrigation and fishing. These structures can in theory help manage water levels, but in reality, many have been poorly managed, contributing to the buildup of water levels, thus endangering nearby towns and villages. What about channelization of our waters for other uses?
We've been asking the state governors or state government, why not to create some channelization? As the water is, before maybe during the dry season, construct a channel from the back of River Niger or back of River Benue. Take it some kilometers, maybe 10 kilometers away, create a channel. Go there and create a very big reservoir. Do it as many as we can within your own catchment. Let each state do the same thing. During the heavy flood, at a certain level of the River Niger or Benue, this excess will be diverted. And it has to be properly constructed, the channel and the reservoir. Like what we have in what we call a Jabi Lake. It is artificial. And once there is any place we have a body of water, life springs there.
As floods continue to devastate areas of Nigeria year in, year out, the environmental, economic, and most importantly, the human toll is always very huge. Therefore, the need for all stakeholders to adopt strategies to curb the effect of flooding cannot be overstated.
Don't dispose waste indiscriminately. We should stop building within the flood banks or river banks. And then these people who are developing estates, please, we urge them to do what is called flood inundation mapping. What happened in Gwagwalada 2019. One man said, I've been living here for 24 years. And my answer to the man was that what we call return interval. Certain magnitude of flood will occur this year. Maybe it may take about 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. That same amount will come again. Maybe the flood travel went on holiday. The return interval came. You were coming, you saw somebody who put a structure there. You had to bulldoze it.
Our focus on Weekend Deal today will be on flooding in Nigeria and probable solutions to curbing its spread.
All right, so my guest is actually somewhere in the studio, so we've been engaged, in conversation. But right now, we know that, across the world, Europe, Asia, they're experiencing some extreme weather condition, occasioned by the advances of climate change. So Ayuba Tete, did some work in that regard. So let's take this report from Tete, and after that, we'll introduce my guest, which I often refer to as the weatherman.
The year 2022 so far has witnessed some extreme weather events, from intense heat waves across Europe that have caused thousands of deaths in several countries, to wildfires that have decimated tens of thousands of hectares of land. Other parts of the globe are dealing with heavy downpour and floods that have unfortunately killed thousands and displaced millions. Sad as it may be, this has been and will continue to be a natural occurrence as the world climate continues to change.
The causes of climate change are very much associated with anthropogenic activities, that is, human activities, and they range from one, power generation, power utilization, emission of greenhouse gases, production of food, production of shelter, manufacturing activities. These are human activities that have influenced, that have aggravated the natural factors of climate change.
Probably those affected could find some closure if they could understand further the world's climate and how it fluctuates from year to year.
The immediate impact is going to be on the human health. And who are much more, who are the vulnerables? The older people are much vulnerable because, they can move, then cardiovascular diseases are very common and so many other heat-related diseases that are associated with. Then it puts pressure on the emergencies. You see ambulance running from one corner to the other. Then it puts stress on water supply because they have to provide water to cool down the body in order to adjust to the immediate temperature. It places strains on so many things, even on agricultural products. It can affect, the productivity level of agricultural produces in them.
Many theorists in the past, as well as the present, are quick to predict these phenomena as signs of a pending apocalypse. But the truth is, climate change is constant and recurrent, just like all things in life. The best we can do is to continue to research, to be able to predict and prepare ahead of time, to minimize damages and losses whenever the climate change occurs.
Of course, the objective is to limit the damages, knowing fully that some of these natural occurrences can hardly be avoided, even though some say we can reduce the impact. And let me just quickly introduce the weatherman I earlier talked about. Is the Professor Mansur Bako Matazu. He's the Director General of NIMET. You are welcome to our studios.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigerians.
Now, let's start with your 2022 seasonal climate prediction. Of course, it's just a prediction.
Yes.
You do that to, put people on the alert, warn people about the possible weather conditions that will be experienced in a particular year. Now, from your prediction and reality, is there synergy so far?
In all our previous forecasts for the last 15 years, we've been recording more than 95% precision and accuracy. And even according to WMO, 60% precision is good because the weather is a natural phenomena and it's dynamic. But we integrated in our case updates, periodic updates on a monthly basis. We also do have weekly heavy rainfall updates, and we do also have the 3-day high impact weather update, in addition to the daily forecasting that also NTA helps us to also broadcast.
But Prof, the thing is, I can't help but to wonder if we have predictions out as early as February. You expect that, okay, it's not yet the rainy season, so we have time to prepare, to take the necessary precaution to avert the the challenge of flood we have been experiencing in the country. But despite that, of course, just this morning from Leadership Weekend, it's there just beside you, flooding houses, farms, destroy as residents seek shelter in Yobe State. It's not just Yobe. We have different parts of the country still grappling with flood challenge. Exactly. What happens? Is it that we don't take this prediction serious?
Actually, there's need for serious improvement with regards to integration of our focus and what we call decision support advisories to various MDAs and other relevant stakeholders, and of course users at the grassroots level to comply. I will give an example like for agriculture. A simple uptake of our information will guarantee 95% reduction in climate extreme event risk, and will also tend to increase yields of any farmer by about 30-35%. And for early warning, in the whole value chain of climate services, we have 3 strata. And the first strata is the producer strata, which NIMED and Nigerian Hydrological Agency stands. We issued our forecast as early as February, and NISA followed up with annual flood outlook in late April. And this must have given enough information and lead time for different MDAs, which we now considered as enablers. And these enablers will definitely therefore integrate and then adopt and relay the information to their various sectors. And these sectors include agriculture, water resources, including the dam management, health, because of the climate-induced diseases like malaria and meningitis, road constructions, transportation, etc. So at times this is where the disconnect exists. I can pretty say that at the federal level we have been experiencing excellent horizontal coordination in terms of information flow and response. But the disconnect we experience is the vertical flow of that information to state and local levels. And this, I must say, that we always preach and appeal to the state governments, the subnationals, to always align their activities and approach us. We don't, at no cost, NIMED and NISA provide these services, and after the national focus, we engage in downscaling.
Exactly. Talking about the downscaling, and of course you go as far as, translating this into different languages. So 3 major languages we have in the country, yet.
Yeah, I think response is poor, and we really need to do more on this. And on this, I would like to appeal, like we have a working relationship with National Orientation Agency and also Federal Ministry of Communication. We need to do a lot of sensitization so that people take weather forecast decisions of us integrated information into their activities, because the business is no more as usual with regards to climate, because we've been seeing extreme events occurring even in areas that they've never had such issues. In Europe, they've recorded extreme heat waves. In Australia, it rained for over 1,000 millimeters of rain within 24 hours. And we are seeing a replica of such even in the country. It rained in Lagos for consecutive 5 days, and parts of Yobe, 13 communities were also submerged, and most of which also had to relocate to other communities. And even in our recent update of our forecast, we still have more floods coming in this July that will affect parts of northeast of Taraba and pockets of southwest, and the extreme pockets also of northwest, parts of Sokoto and Kebbi State. So compliance and also integration of the forecast information into planning, into our daily activities is very critical. We've gone very far in translating this, and we've issued this document, and they are also available on our website. We also came up with an app that people can access this information across all the 774 local government areas, and which is also free at NIMED SCP on all the Play Store and Apple Store.
Is that the name of the app?
Yeah, NIMED SCP.
Okay.
Yeah, we've graduated from rainfall prediction to climate prediction, because the document contains detailed parameters beyond rainfall, including temperature forecast, especially during the hot season.
Okay. Now, let me quickly take this question from one of our viewers. This is Aliu Kula from Borno State. He says, please, Prof, what are the non-scientific factors in weather forecast?
It's a very good question. we have what we call traditional methods of weather forecasts. In parts of the world, they've documented this, and even in Nigeria, this exists, what they popularly call as rainmakers, and looking at some behavior of plants and animals to predict weather.
Really?
Of recent, we are having a collaboration with Nasarawa State University, Department of History and Archaeology, to be able to document this because it has not been documented from our available record in the country. I will give one example of goat. Goat, they have magnetic feet, and as such, they react to electrical current and discharge. So a goat, whenever communities sees goat becoming restless and run amok, so that shows that there is an approaching thunderstorm.
Wow.
And they can have this feeling from about 400 kilometers. Wow. So if there is thunderstorm around Lokoja, goats around Abuja could be feeling that, and the moment they become restless, so people will have an idea that in the next few weeks we're going to have rain. And then also there are some plants and animals. There's one in the north they popularly call damina, and then also we have some shrubs that sprout up during the transition of dry season to rainy season. So
that's quite detailed.
This is very critical, and we also consider it as an input into our forecast, including the rainmakers, but which we have also realized that it has an element of science, because there's maybe introduction of smoke into the atmosphere, which also tally with the cloud seeding.
When you say rainmakers, the idea quickly is maybe there's any spiritual thing that you do.
It has scientific link based on our analysis, but forecasting, you require a lot of input into it, and what we are doing in NIMED is even involving the communities. Of recent, we have distributed what we call farmers' rain gauges, simple rain gauges that they will mount around their plot of farmlands or community center to be able to observe rain, and then with that they can the documents. We have seen a community in Jibia that an individual was recording rainfall days from 1982 to date. So such people just require additional support to be able to do a lot. So it helps us a lot in getting feedback from the community, and also in creating awareness among such communities, which is really what is lacking.
Okay, creating awareness. I know it's not just your job alone. You have other sister agencies that should be involved in this awareness creation. But one key thing is the fact that the people continue to build on waterways. People, continue to, erect buildings, farming on floodplains, and then despite, the warnings, they will tell you, if you ask me not to engage this land, where else do you want me to go?
I think that is why I recall vividly participated in the updating the building code of the country, and there's also a chapter that is on climate. So for each eco-climatic zone of this country, it has some specification based on the prevailing weather condition on what to do with regards to building structures, including housing. We are forging ahead to establish a relationship with urban and regional planning departments and agencies, so that they continue to sensitize people. And also enforcement is very critical here, preventing people from living on floodplains, because for any river that has reached maturity level, it creates a floodplain 10 times than the size of the river, the width of the river. So and for flood, scientific evidence indicates that we have what we call return period of floods. It's either 3 years, and then on the minimum, and then you can have 10 years, and 50 years and 1 century. That is a 100-year return period. And the longer the years, the higher the magnitude.
Yeah.
Like the 1999 floods, so that happened in the country, was a 50-year return floods. So all this needs to be put into consideration in having city plans, and also enforcement is very critical. And then people should understand that exposure to risks, especially now with regards to climate change, extreme events, is very dangerous.
Okay, we'll talk further about climate change after we must have taken our next report. And before that, I was sharing with our viewer that, when I was a kid, we would play in the rain. And then at the end of the day, yes, our parents never liked the idea. But, instead of the excitement, the love for the weather and everything, we began to, resent it because of the destruction that comes with it, without knowing that we also play our own part in ensuring that we experience that destruction. So this indiscriminate waste disposal is one of the actions we engage in as individuals that cause flooding. So let's take this report put together by Dio.
A major cause of flooding in Nigeria is attributed to the indiscriminate dumping of refuse at the blocks, drains, gutters, and canals. Despite early yearly warnings of the high rain intensity from Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, some Nigerians still clog the drains, gutters, and canals, and ultimately orchestrate flooding, making a very bad situation worse.
Poor waste management has several consequences, one of which also leads to loss of biological diversity because it pollutes the land and water. And another one is blocking of drainage systems, which has another consequence of creating flooding, massive flooding. Every city is planned with drainage systems and all that. When people now dispose of their waste in a way that is not environment friendly, that is in a way that does not tally with the original plan of that city, it generates a lot of problems, one of which is flooding through blockade of drainage systems.
There are different layers of waste disposal that are universally accepted, but in Nigeria, we dump all waste together without differentiating between recycling, landfill collections, incineration, and thermal treatment plants.
There are policies, directives to minimize waste minimization. We have not started implementing or even evolved such policies as not using polythene bags for whatever anyone purchases. Paper bags can do. There are many other ways of minimizing waste. Having said that, when the waste is already there, they have to have the proper agencies managing. Many states have, of course, we know that. Even local governments have that. But it's not just enough to have agencies. The infrastructure for waste management must be there. Something like that exists in many places. I know many states have the waste management authorities. They are empowered to effect arrests, prosecute, punish. They have such establishments. I think we should do more of empowerment of the existing management agencies and tweaking them a little bit to give them the power to enforce some laws, to effect arrests, to prosecute, and things like that.
Nigerians must be well sensitized on the use of effective waste management to change their poor waste disposal habits. This will go a long way not only to reduce the occurrence of incessant flooding, it will also keep the environment clean and reduce the negative impact on the health of the populace.
Well, to reduce the negative impact on the health of individuals, because if you do not create a way for water, it will certainly create its own way. You can't, really stop that. So your best bet is to stay off the, floodplains. Now, Prof, before we, end this session, somebody is asking, what is the best method to adopt in averting flood in our rural communities? It goes ahead to say, how can local rural communities source for fund against flood and other relief materials? This is coming from Ndabida Abdulatif from Kano State.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you, Ndabida. Actually, in our prediction, we offer advisories based on sectors, and like for farming and early warning, we provide what we call climate smart actions of clearing drainages, establishing some structures even in the farmlands, and also especially tree planting helps to stabilize and reduce flow of water. A lot of advisories are detailed in our forecast, and they can access it either online and even including the translated one. But because of time, I'll go through the issue of relief. As I said, in the value chain of climate services, we are the producers of the service, and we have enablers which relay the information. So part of these enablers who relay the information to the users at the grassroots, we have NEMA. And NEMA is responsible for providing relief materials, especially when there is issue of disaster or damages to property around communities. So it's just to align with the relevant local authorities, and also including proper documentation. It also helps documenting incidences and then also working as a community. Based on our collaboration, some communities in the north under the IFAD project, they have what they call climate change agents at their community level, and who also attend some of our trainings and roving workshops. So it's just to align and liaise with the relevant local authorities.
So in essence, it's fair to say that we are doing our best to adapt to the climate change, scenario in the country.
Yeah, we're doing a lot in terms of policy and also implementation of such policy at the federal level. But we need to do more at the grassroots, subnational level, especially at the state, which covers the local and the district levels.
Well, this certainly is a collective responsibility.
Very much.
I must say thank you very much, Prof, for sharing your time with us. Yes, we have been speaking with DG NIMET, that is Professor Mansour Bako Mutazu. Right now, we go on a break, and after that, we still have more for you vis-a-vis flood in Nigeria. All right, thank you for staying with us. Now, we know that Adamawa State is one of the states that is often affected by flood in Nigeria. So let's take this report from NTA Yola, and after that, we have another guest.
Due to its geographical location, Adamawa State has so many settlements that are highly vulnerable to floods, especially communities living along the banks of rivers Benue and Gongola.
Now I'm looking at the geographical position of Yola itself. We are on a hill. The southern part of Adamawa is hill completely. So most of the flooding we are experiencing in Jimeta come as a result of flood from the hill that is coming down into the Jimeta town.
Most of the water coming from, especially when Lago Dam is being opened, will naturally get its way into the urban center through backflow and other processes, and it will cause flooding within the urban center.
In the past, flooding in the state has affected hundreds of thousands of people with varying levels of destruction to homes and properties, despite flood warnings issued by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. And for this rainy season, the story may not be different.
The prediction for this year, 2022, NIMET's seasonal climate prediction and NIESA annual flood outlook shows that in Adamawa State, about 5 local governments will experience highly probable flood risks, while 5 also will experience moderately flood risks.
The closer any community is to the main river channel, the higher the risks of being flooded. Moronji and Guantana and Vunuklang are communities living along the banks of River Benue. What are their experiences?
Sometimes we meet some snakes inside our house, then we go up to the stones and wait for the 2 days or 4 days when the floods go back.
Once there is rain, one cannot pass even by foot, talk less of keke napep, no machine or his vehicle. We do park all our vehicles by the normal roadside.
When there is floods, even if it is in the night, we don't have to sleep. We have to stay awake.
As we are in the peak of the rainy season, how are these communities preparing in anticipation of flood, bearing in mind the flood alerts?
We are in hand of God because we don't have any preparation. We have already tried our best.
We are praying that Almighty Allah to serve us. That's the only thing.
Prevention is said to be better than cure.
Well, some devastating images of the impact of flood in that report coming from Adamawa states. And of course, Adamawa is one of the highly probable flood risk states going by the AFO 2022. That is annual flood outlook put together by the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency. And to talk further about this, we have joined us in the studio Honorable Minister of Water Resources and person of Engineer Suleiman Adamu. You're welcome to our studios.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, now going by the AFO, that is the annual flood outlook, we are in the second scenario now where the flood begins from July to September. Now, the first scenario, how well did we adapt to the warning given by the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency, given, I mean, from your observation?
Well, I think from my vantage position, I think we did what we needed to do. That is to give the annual flood outlook, to say what is going to happen or what is likely to happen here and there. And then this is left for the respective authorities down the line, be it state and local authorities and communities, to deal with what comes on a day-to-day basis. Of course, there's also federal support through the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. So, to a large extent, I've not had reports of very, very critical floods like the ones we had in 2012.
Yeah.
But obviously there are communities and isolated areas that have continued to experience flood, and that is a natural occurring thing. It's an annual thing. There are areas that are flood prone, and there's just unless the rains don't fall, then it's highly unlikely that there will not be some kind of flood. So I think the best people to address this are probably those affected states and communities to be able to tell us what they were able to do. But I'm hoping that all the measures that we asked them to take into consideration, all the measures we asked them to take, they have done that. For instance, ensuring that people are not building on water courses, removing all kinds of dwellings on water courses, improving drainage systems. In the course of time during the dry season, and even here in Abuja, I've seen a lot of effort by municipal authorities and maybe state authorities, desilting drainage systems, drainages and gutters and so on and so forth. So I think there is an awakening. At least I can say that with a lot of confidence that along the way there has been a lot of awakening but a lot of work still needs to be done.
Well, it's good that you admit the fact that a lot of work needs to be done, because a lot of times your duty is to give out the prediction, to warn respective states and including the FCT, but it's as if nothing much is usually being done to check or mitigate the impact of flood, because just like you say, yes, efforts are on the way, but you see people still building on waterways. If you ask people to move away from those environments, it's always difficult.
Well, again, it still goes back to the authorities in those locations, state governments, local government authorities. They need to enforce the regulations, and we have town planning regulations. We have building regulations. Why are they not being, enforced? Even one of the major things that I've seen in recent times is that slums continue to build up in lots of cities. In our in those days when we were young, plots were never allocated in locations without the infrastructure having put in place, or at least even if they were allocated, buildings were not allowed to be, construction was not allowed to be done without all those drainage layouts and roads. As at least except in FCT today, I think many other state governments are not doing that kind of thing. So I think it behoves on state and local government authorities to enforce the regulations. If we don't enforce them, we'll continue to have these disasters. We'll continue to build slums. These slums are there. You can't even look. Even the access for fire service, in case there is a fire disaster, you cannot even have enough width of a road for the fire service to move in. So a lot of things are going wrong with our urbanization. I think it's so rapid, but I think authorities need to be, state and local government authorities need to be one step ahead, to ensure that all building regulations and town planning rules and regulations are strictly adhered to for the well-being of the people.
Because if they are strictly adhered to, the flash floods we normally have in the city of Lagos probably will be, checkmate.
Oh yes, yes, but also, Lagos, one of the problems is drainage. Again, if there can be a heavy investment in the drainage system, I think that will work. I know we have some constraints in terms of financing, but there are things that we really have to take the bull by the horn. If you look at New Orleans, for instance, in the United States, during I think Hurricane Katrina, it devastated the city. But immediately after the cleanup and everything, I think they are investing about $14 billion to putting in a structure to ensure that kind of thing doesn't happen. So when we get this experience, we also need to do something to ensure that these things don't, at least not to say they won't happen again. They will try to happen because nature is nature. There's nothing you can do about it. But at least you try to alleviate some of these things. At federal level, because of what we saw in the experiences of the 2012 floods, we realized that we need to accelerate this process of training the River Niger and River Benue. And again, although we have been making a lot of effort trying to do that, we're constrained by funding because these are huge capital investments. But I think they just have to be done at some time. Otherwise, we'll continue to have this problem.
Now, let's look at dams and the role they play in, checking the excesses of flood we experience in the country. Yes, we have a lot of dams, both the bigger ones and the smaller ones, but it's like they are not really operating or to their full capacity.
No, I think you'll have to look at it from different perspectives. Most of the dams in Nigeria were not built to check against flooding. Probably the first deliberate effort to check against flooding is Kashimbila Dam. The rest mostly are for water supply, irrigation, or multipurpose dams.
For hydro.
Yeah. But the major problem is that when the flood waters come, there is a certain level of water that the dam must maintain. Above that level, it's going to be a disaster if you allow the water to rise to that level. And therefore, you have to open the proper gates, and then you have the spillway, which usually is when the water reaches maximum flood level. and there is like an emergency exit for the water to flow. Now, what happens is that it's when you have that excess flow, and people downstream are not prepared for it, then that excess flow now becomes a problem. It also floods farms, floods villages, and so on and so forth. I think there are lots of avenues but even the rivers. Our rivers in this country have become highly silted up, basically because of human activity. We deforest our land. We are degrading the land. When we remove trees, we don't put the trees back, with erosion comes into place. So when there is rain, a lot of sand and silt are washed into the river. And then, of course, when they flow, the water flows, and the river channel cannot contain the volume of that water, then it spills over, and also causes a lot of problems, especially in farmlands and villages that are riparian villages, towns that are on the banks of the rivers.
Yeah, but some will argue that siltation is almost a natural process. If maybe the water is not, the river is not well dredged. And of course, dredging is something that we have not really attempted in this country.
Well, the nature of our terrain and vegetation, there are lots of areas that dredging is a waste of money, in my view. Because if you dredge, even the River Niger that we're talking about, if you dredge it today and the next rainy season comes, there's going to be a problem. Why? Because you need to understand where the River Niger is coming. It's coming from Futajalon, but it runs through Mali, Burkina Faso. Almost half of its length, if not more, is in the Sahara Desert. So the Sahara is there, it's been there for millennia. So can you stop the sand from coming into it? But imagine this 4,000 kilometers of River Niger and say you want to dredge it. So if you dredge, next year the rains come, they are coming with a lot of sand again. I think what we need to do is to go back to, sustaining our ecosystem by, watershed management, we call it. Okay. And a project like there's a project with Acrisal, called Acrisal, is a World Bank intervention and it's going to be managed by my Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, and my ministry. So I think a project like that, when it's in place, will give us an example on how to manage our watersheds. Dredging, it's virtually too late. We're late in the day. Which this deforestation did not start yesterday. Maybe it's been there for 100, 200 years ago, So, but the effect is being felt today. But if we go back now and start doing watershed management, maybe we can reverse the trend in a couple of years or a couple of decades.
Watershed management, is it equivalent to channelization of excess water?
Essentially, it's about reducing land degradation, improving the land. And when you improve the land, you are reducing erosion, soil erosion, and so on and so forth. You have forestation, you are reforesting the land. You're also improving the nutritional value of the soil, and so on and so forth, for cultivation and so on. Lots of things. These are scientific things. There are lots of connections. But all encompassing, we say watershed management. If we manage the watershed, where all the rains are coming from, we can reduce this siltation. Even if you talk about dredging, again, it's just a temporary measure. A river like River Niger or River Benue, there are other engineering solutions to reduce this kind of situation. We call them river training. There are lots of civil engineering works involved. Dredging is part of it. You reduce some of the soil, you reclaim another side, and so on and so forth. You straighten the river here and there, and you create dikes and so on and so forth. That's a huge endeavor. Most rivers in Europe and, especially in Europe, that's how they were at least managed, through these river training works. And that can even help navigation, because if you reduce the siltation, then it makes it easier to use the river to move goods and people.
Well, trust me, all of these projects, it's quite, capital. It's capital intensive, and one wonders, are you not making enough argument to attract more funds to execute some of this project? Because when you talk about water channelization, in some climes, it will go a long way in checking or mitigate the excesses for flood in the country.
You see, the problem is we're a very impatient country. And some of our problems, if we had done the right things in the last 40, 50 years, then we would not be talking about this. So if we're starting now, we still need those years. This issue like dealing with River Niger, what we are trying to do as a government now is to have a master plan. And you need to plan before you can move on. But when we have that master plan, what has been happening in this country several times is that a plan is drawn up, but subsequent administrations don't really care about carrying that plan through. So what we need now, we're trying to do a master plan that we hope succeeding governments will come and work on, so that you say, okay, this year we're spending this much. These projects that I'm talking about, like River Training or River Niger, is a project that can take 20 years. River Danube in Europe, I think it took them 100 years working on it. But in our own climb here, everything we want to see in the next 4 years. Projects like this and programs like this cannot be done in 4 years, cannot be done in 10 years, cannot even be finished in 20 years. So we should be ready in Nigeria to be looking at the future seriously, and for succeeding administrations to be able to carry these programs through religiously.
And I'm sure this will go a long way in adding value to the integrated, water management in the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, lastly, before we go, I know what can we really do at the federal and state level in order to adopt to the concept of living with flood instead of fighting them all the time, and also taking into consideration the idea of having more evacuation centers?
Well, I think at our level, I think first and foremost is that everybody, whether states or communities or individual, we should start taking this annual flood outlooks very, very seriously. Okay. People should not see it just as an annual ritual. This is a serious business. So we should be conscious of it. Like I said, issues of floodplains, our city planners must be involved. Sometimes you deliberately allow certain areas of a city to be flooded because it's a relief, But now you see that even those floodplains that are meant to take away some of the water away from the people, you come and see new layouts being built. People are building, sometimes buildings collapse because the soil is not good. They just come and do what they want to do. I think we should take our town planning regulations very, very seriously as well. So if all that is done, flood is an act of God, but it is avoidable. Every location, if this place, if you see a certain area that has had a flood in the last 1,000 years, it can come back in another 1,000 years or less. So water will always find its course. So what is important is we avoid those places, even if it means relocating your city. I think, it has happened in many places. If at the end of the day relocating the city also is the solution, then we should. So we should alert ourselves. We should be forewarned so that we can be forearmed.
Well, thank you very much. And if I take something away from this, is the fact that we all have a responsibility to, play in mitigating the impact of flood in the country. It's almost a natural thing. We can but we can avoid it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu. Right now, we go on a break, and after that, the show continues. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now, we know that some people have advocated for the construction of more dams to help control flood in Nigeria. But, of course, dams have their other uses. So let's take this report put together by yours sincerely.
Presently, there are over 300 large, medium and small dams which have been constructed and are operational in Nigeria. These dams provide domestic and industrial water supply hydropower generation, as well as agricultural irrigation. According to the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, the Nigerian government completed 9 new dams in different parts of the country between 2016 and this year, and 11 more dams are being built, scheduled for completion before 2023. With an already large and growing number of dams in the country, it begs the question, just how functional are they?
These dams, to a large extent, are grossly underutilized. One, because there hasn't been a very serious revolution and advocacy on the need to actually put the dams to use for agriculture and other aspects that it's supposed to serve. Most of the time, there is no proper coordination and synergy between the federal government and the state government, even from the planning stage up to the time the dams comes to be. These are some of the challenges that are found around it.
Ideally, one of the many possible functions of dams is flood control. Every year, Nigeria records increasing statistics of the damage from flooding, loss of lives, loss of farmlands, damage to roads and property. Surveys of the country's dams reveal an alarming number that are either not functional or underutilized. One factor attributed to the redundancy of the dams in many states is indifference to agriculture development.
We are underutilizing them grossly because there isn't much information on the need to actually use them for agriculture properly. The technology is not there. It's not been properly harnessed. And the people have not been actually mobilized to actually accept the need to farm all the year season, all through the year. The dams also will obviously provide water for irrigations that you can farm throughout the year in the dry seasons and the rest of them. I'll give you a typical example of the Swashi Dam. When the Swashi Dam around Niger-Borgu axis was established, until recently, the demography around the place is poor. People didn't even know that the dam exists and the need to actually use it for the purposes of irrigation.
Other factors such as climate change, poor watershed management, deforestation, irrigation system, waste and poor maintenance have laid several of the country's dams to waste, with structural collapse as well as operational and functional failure.
It's just like what happened in the petroleum industry bill. It's an act already, and you can see the developments, the revolutions along the line. So once we get the necessary act for the water, we'll expect that a lot of people will just come in and then the dams will be taken over. I mean, once there's a concession on the dams, a lot of investors will come over and then we'll make the best use of the resource in water.
Strategic development of Nigeria's water infrastructure with a specific focus on dams bears the potential for the country's sustainable development, especially for water supply, sanitation and health, agricultural development, and energy production.
Our conversation on challenge of flood in Nigeria and probable solutions on it will continue tomorrow. So stay with us. But for now, we say bye-bye.